Good evening. I'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Cotati City Council and the successor agency to the former Cotati Community Redevelopment Agency to order at 6 o'clock. We'll start with a roll call.
Councilmember Harvey,
Here.
Vice Mayor Lemus,
Here.
Mayor Ford.
Here.
We'll show Councilmember Sparks and Councilmember Savage as absent.
Yes. So Councilmember Sparks was planning to be here, but is too ill to be present, and we appreciate her not inflicting that on the rest of us. And Councilmember Savage had a pre-existing commitment prior to accepting the council seat. So we will proceed with the three of us. We begin our meetings with a land acknowledgement, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and I invite you to stand and join us for those of you who wish. It does. As this is not not an action item, not an item that the council is considering, the public comment time for this is in the item at the end of the agenda titled "Public Comment on Non-Action Agenda Items." So I invite you to make your comment at that point. Thank you. Excuse me, you have lodged your objection. You may stop now. Mr. Barish, you may leave the hall if you wish.
It is clear, sir. Okay, so I'll lodge my objection.
You have lodged it. You need to stop. The City of Cotati recognizes that we're on the ancestral lands of the Coast Miwok, who are the original caretakers of this area. We respectfully acknowledge the indigenous peoples who have been stewarding and maintaining a relationship on this land as knowledge keepers for millennia. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with indigenous communities, but serves as a gesture of respect to the land we are on. And now, join me for the pledge. Next, we move to approval of minutes and notice of waiving of reading of all resolutions and ordinances introduced and or adopted under this agenda. This is an action item. We have two sets of agendas, February 18th special meeting and February 25th regular meeting. So are there any corrections that have been noted by council members? Okay, I'll open the minutes for those two meetings up for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment on the minutes, come on, step forward. Seeing nobody in the chambers, we'll check with Zoom.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Ford. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, if you would like to make a public comment on this item, please use the raise hand icon. Seeing no hands, Mayor Ford, that will end public comment.
Thank you. So I'd be looking for a motion. Go ahead.
I do have to say that I have to abstain for the 25th since I was not available. I wasn't here that day. Do I need to abstain from that?
You do not need to abstain.
You do not, you do
Right.
not need to abstain. If you choose to abstain, then we would just have to skip that one and push it to the next meeting
Okay.
for approval.
I did read the minutes, so if I read them, I can vote on them.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second?
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries 3-0. Thank you. All right, a few announcements. A meeting orientation for new attendees or viewers. In conformance with the Brown Act and the adopted City Council rules, the meeting agenda includes items labeled as action items, where the City Council may consider the item. If the City Council considers the item, citizens will be afforded the opportunity to provide comments relevant to the item being discussed. The meeting agenda also includes a citizens' business item, which is the designated place on the agenda where citizens have the right to say whatever they wish. However, the Brown Act prohibits the City Council from taking action or considering any item that is not on this agenda to ensure that other members of the community who wish to provide comment are notified in advance through a properly noticed meeting agenda. Next, Measure S supports police services, a variety of recreation programs for all ages, and the maintenance of our streets, parks, and public buildings. See details on the web at cotadicity.gov. Citizens interested in receiving City of Cotati community alerts via text or email are encouraged to enroll with Civic Ready by signing up on the city's website, www.cotadicity.gov, under the How Do I link at the top of the homepage. Next, have you noticed a streetlight out, pothole, or issues in a city park? We want to keep Cotati beautiful and running smoothly, so please let us know what needs to be fixed by going to the city website under How Do I and, quote, report a service request. And like always, we love to hear from you, so please feel free to contact the city at 707-792-4600 or info@cotadicity.gov. If you have a non-emergency issue after normal business hours, you can connect with us at 707-792-4611. And of course, if you have an emergency, please contact 911. Continue to look for updates on the city's website and social media channels available on Facebook, Instagram, and Civic Ready. All right, tonight we have...
Speak on this matter, sir, if I put on my speaker card? Speak on this matter?
No, we're not speaking on announcements. That's not an action.
Lodge my objection
That isn't...
quickly.
You have already lodged your objection,
Violation of the
sir.
law, Government Code Section 54954.
Mr. Barrich, one more time speaking out of order.
I lodged my objection, sir. Thank you very much.
You have said that multiple times. One more time.
When I needed to.
One more time, I will ask that you be removed from the chambers. Proclamations. So we have 3 proclamations tonight. The first one is a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Cotati declaring March 2025 as American Red Cross Month. And I'd like to ask Councilmember Harvey to share that proclamation and invite our guests forward.
Yes, Andy and Steve, I believe that you're here to accept this. If you could come up to the podium, I will read this to you, and then we'll allow you to speak.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Proclamation of the City Council of the City of Cotati declaring March 25th, 2025 as American Red Cross Month. Whereas this March we celebrate American Red Cross Month by recognizing the compassionate acts of the people in Cotati and by renewing our commitment to lend a helping hand to our neighbors in need. And whereas since Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross almost 150 years ago, generation after generation has stepped up to deliver relief and care across our country and around the world. And whereas the volunteers, blood and platelet donors, and financial supporters who now give back through the Sonoma-Napa disaster response area of the American Red Cross remain unwavering in their commitment to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of today's emergencies. And whereas these voluntary and generous contributions shine a beacon of hope in people's darkest hours, whether it's delivering shelter, food, and comfort during disasters, providing critical blood donations for hospital patients, supporting service members, veterans and their families, saving lives with first aid, CPR, AED, and other skills, or delivering international aid and reconnecting loved ones separated by global crises. And whereas this work to uplift our community is truly made possible by those who selflessly answer the call to help, whenever, wherever it's needed. And whereas we hereby recognize this month of March in honor of their remarkable service, and we ask everyone to join in their commitment to care for one another. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed on this 11th day of March 2025 that the City Council of the City of Cotati does hereby proclaim March 2025 as American Red Cross Month and encourages all citizens of Cotati to reach out and support its humanitarian mission.
Thank you very, very much to the City of Cotati, the council, and Kevin for his fine work in assisting me to get this proclamation to you. I have been with Red Cross since the Tubbs fire in 2017. and I've been a volunteer and also in the Kincaid Fire. One of the things that Red Cross does, as you're well aware, is respond to disasters. Most recently, the horrific fires in Los Angeles, and prior to that, the hurricanes on the East Coast. And that's what people know Red Cross for the most. However, there's a lot of what we call blue sky activities that we do as well. One of the big ones is collecting blood. Red Cross collects about 40% of the blood that's donated in the United States for use at hospitals and other needed places. We also have services to the armed forces where we help veterans get connected with society after they come back and connected with their loved ones. We do an education program in the schools for kindergarten and second graders to learn how to be prepared for a home fire. Red Cross responds to home fires. We've responded to many in Cotati. The fire department calls us and we come to assist folks in getting some other place to live if they need it. Thank you so much for your good work on our behalf. I haven't been in this since I was a teacher at Thomas Page several years ago. I ended my teaching career as a kindergarten teacher at Thomas Page and enjoyed the city of Cotati so much. With me tonight, Steve Contaritis is a member of the Red Cross Board for the 4 counties, Sonoma, Napa, Solano, and Marin. And Steve wants to say a few words as well.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for this proclamation. The first proclamation day for the American Red Cross was started in 1943 during the height of World War II by President Franklin Roosevelt, and it's been carried on every year since. The Red Cross, as you probably know, is the largest humanitarian organization in the world, the International Red Cross, and the American Red Cross is one of 200 International Red Cross members that supply personnel, equipment, funds for disaster relief all over the world. The mission statement of the American Red Cross is to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies by mobilizing the power of volunteers and the generosity of donors. We couldn't do it without the donors and the volunteers. If you ever see a Red Cross mission going on the news, for example, 90% of the people that you'll see with the Red Cross caps and vests are volunteers. The paid staff of the American Red Cross is less than 10%. Same with the funding. The funding that is donated to the Red Cross is 90% spent on the mission relief efforts and the remaining amount for overhead. So I'd like to, on behalf of the North Bay chapter of the American Red Cross, thank you all for honoring us with the proclamation today.
Thank you, and thank you for all the work that you do. You get people in their darkest hours. And would you like a photo?
Yes.
We have our own professional photographer.
And by the way, if the city of Cotati ever wants to host a Red Cross blood drive, Kevin has my contact information. We'd be happy to help you put that together.
Yeah, come on, come on up in front.
Hi, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you so much for
All right. Smile. Beautiful. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. You send that to me?
Oh, you do. Thank you.
Thanks. See you, yeah.
Our next proclamation is a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Cotati declaring March 16th to 22 as National Surveyors Week in the City of Cotati. And we have representatives of the Sonoma County chapter of the California Land Surveyors Association. So could you come on up so we can read our proclamation and hear some words from you? Whereas surveying has been an essential element in the development of the human environment since the beginning of recorded history, and it is a requirement in the planning and execution of nearly every form of construction, with its most familiar modern uses in the fields of transport, building and construction, communications, mapping, and the definition of legal boundaries for land ownership. And whereas in order to accomplish their objectives, surveyors use elements of engineering, physics, mathematics, astronomy, law, and history. And whereas, since the colonial days of the United States, surveyors have been leaders in the community, statesmen, influential citizens, and shapers of cultural standards, former notable surveyors include George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Lewis and Clark, Daniel Boone, and Henry David Thoreau, among many others. Whereas many services are now provided through the use of sophisticated surveying equipment and techniques, including satellite home, remote sensing devices, and automated positioning, measuring, recording, and plotting equipment. And whereas the establishment of the week of March 16 to 22, 2025 as National Surveyors Week is a fitting tribute to all surveyors, now therefore be it proclaimed on this day of March 11, 2025 by the City Council of the City of Cotati that March 16 to 22, 2025 is hereby declared National Surveyors Week in the City of Cotati. I welcome you to say a few words.
Hello, my name is Monica Wingett, and I'm the Secretary for the California Land Surveyors Association Sonoma Chapter. I'd like to thank you all here for proclamating for National Surveyors Week. As being one of the oldest professions, we may not always be the most well-known, so it is nice to get the word out about what we are, who we are and what we do. Specifically that we work in both private and public sectors, whether it's land development, working for the water agency, or for local cities and counties. We are here to work for you all, and determining boundaries is one of my favorite things, and it's nice that when you do it, it's not just for who you're working for, but for everyone in the neighborhood. And with me, I have Brett Clark.
Hi, my name is Brett Clark. I'm the Vice President of the Sonoma County chapter of the California Land Surveyors Association. I just want to say thanks for the proclamation, and we're here to support the profession, spread knowledge of the profession, and recognize the history.
Thank you so much. Can we get a picture with you as well? Yeah. All right, thank you.
All right, guys, stand back here in front. Smile, everybody. Beautiful. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yes. And our third proclamation is a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Cotati declaring March 2025 as Women's History Month. And Vice Mayor Lemus is going to read this one.
Thank you, and I'm really proud to present this proclamation. So this proclamation of the City Council of the City of Cotati declaring March 2025 as Women's History Month. Whereas,
should we invite our guest to come
yes,
forward?
please. If we can have, we have two guests here. From the Commission of Status of Women, we have Melanie Jones-Carter and Commissioner Katarina Jaduce White. So I want to thank both of you for being here today. Thank you. Thank you. So this proclamation of the City Council of the City of Cotati declares March 2025 as Women's History Month. Whereas women have always played critical roles in shaping the economic, cultural, and social fabric of our society through their participation in the labor force, working both inside and outside the home, in leadership positions, and through creative inspiration. And whereas Women's History Month provides an opportunity for schools and communities to expand and enhance what our children in our community know about the women's role in history and their contributions to the development of this nation. And whereas the story of American women is a story of women of all ages, races, and cultural backgrounds who led campaigns for equality and civil rights, advanced professional and educational opportunities, founded entirely new enterprises, and contributed significantly to the arts, sciences, and humanistic causes. And whereas women from every background have long realized that an uneven playing field will never bring equality or justice, and we all need to eliminate bias and discrimination entirely for our lives and institutions. And whereas the 2025 theme for Women's History Month is moving forward together, women educating and inspiring generations, which celebrates the collective strength and influence of women who have dedicated their lives to education, mentorship, and leadership. And whereas Women's History Month is both a call to acknowledge outstanding women we know by name and to pay homage to the dedication of nameless women who contributed to our nation. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed on this day of March 11, 2025, by the City Council of the City of Cotati in recognition of the significant role played by women whose courage and vision inspires hope for today's women and to make tomorrow's history. Thereby proclaim the month of March 2025 as Women's History Month in Cotati. Yay! So I would love if you can share some words on Women's History Month.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Ford and members of the council. We are especially honored to be here today because you may know that even though this is a national organization, the Commission on the Status of Women started right here in Sonoma County. I'm Vice Chair of the Commission, and with me today is Katarina. This year's theme is For All Women and Girls, Rights, Equity, and Empowerment, and we can certainly use that now. At this time when women's rights, I'm tongue-tied for some reason, at a time when women's rights are being challenged on a daily basis, even as we speak, there are calls to remove women who have made significant accomplishments erased from history. And let's not forget, the elimination of diversity, equity, and inclusion will set women back to the future. What can you do, you ask? International Women's Day has created 32 specific ideas and action items. I'm going to read them all for you now. No, I'm just kidding. Here are a few. Support women-focused charities. Organize award ceremonies that recognize women, just as you have done today. Mentor women. Call out gender bias every time you see and hear it. Advocate for policy change by writing to local and national leaders. Make your 5 calls a day on issues that impact women. There's a new app called 5 Calls, and it reminds you to do 5 things each day. Write somebody, call somebody, do something. Make those calls about women. Locally, the Commission on the Status of Women provides resources and input to our Board of Supervisors on issues affecting women. What we are working on currently is mental health, homelessness, and immigration issues. I'd like to leave you with one of my favorite quotes by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of concerned, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has, and we are a small group of concerned, committed citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to share something, Katarina? Okay. Thank you so much. So if you wait right there for us, we'll meet you so we can take our picture.
Yes. And I have a photo for you.
I'll do you first.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, one smile. And more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, I will.
Nice meeting you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting us today.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you all. Next on our agenda, we have a presentation from the city's partner in several projects, the Petaluma People Services Center, discussing services in Cotati. So,
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mayor and council members. I'm excited to be here. And first, I want to start by saying, don't let the name of Petaluma People Services Center confuse you. Cotati, you matter, and you do matter. And the things that we do at Petaluma People Services Center are available to most of the residents in Cotati. Next slide, please. So we're celebrating 51 years of services in PPSC, so we're pretty darn good at it. I have to admit it. I've been with PPSC for 21 years. I'm Elise Semple, and I'm the executive director there. And one of the things that we really are passionate about is making sure everybody in our community has access to services that help strengthen the dignity and self-sufficiency of who they are and where they are. And it's really, really important in all of the services we do. Next slide, please. So I'm going to just go through the list of 95 programs, actually 96. I added one on Monday, but I think it's important for you to all know that most of the programs that we provide at Petaluma People Services Center are available to anybody in your community, including our Aging Well Together services. It starts with our community connectors. Traditionally, community connectors in the social services world would be called case managers, but as we all age in our community, depending on what our wealth is or how we've lived, we may not want to be case managed, but our funding comes from the Older Americans Act, so these services are available to anybody 60 or older or an adult with a disability. And the Community Connector's role is to connect you to all of the services that are available to you in Sonoma or even in California that may make your life better. That includes access to mental health services. PPSC runs a program for the county called the Healthy Ideas. It starts with depression screening and then access to community-based counseling at PPSC or at our new office in Rohnert Park at the Rohnert Park People Services Center. We also have the PEARLS program, which is available, again, to anybody 60 and older. It is a coaching program that really has to do with mental health coaching. Again, anybody 60 and older or an adult with disability. What the coaches do is use an evidence-based program out of the University of Washington to give anybody tools that they need to be able to age in their community the way they want to age. And then we also have the You're Not Alone program. This program started right at about 5 years ago, March 18th, 5 years ago when we went into shutdown. We went to our congregate dining or our cafe and met with our seniors and said, you know, there's this pandemic coming, it'll probably be 2 or 3 days. And the seniors said, well, who are we going to talk to? Because this is where we come for our socialization. And so we launched You're Not Alone. You're Not Alone today touches over 3,000 seniors in Sonoma County with a call from 3,000 volunteers in our community. So there's an opportunity for everybody to get involved and become a caller. Or if you're not able to access email so that you can get the question of the day, you actually can receive those calls. It's very simple. It's a reach out to Petaluma People Services Center and say, I want to be part of the You're Not Alone program. A silly mistake, sometimes we learn lessons. One of the lessons I learned was 5 years ago, I said to our community volunteers, I'll send a question every day. I still send a question every day to our community so that they can ask that question. We also have transportation services. I Ride Petaluma and I Ride Rohnert Park does serve Cotati. One of the things that happens with this is many seniors are not able to use paratransit for a variety of different reasons, usually because of the rules around paratransit to get to medical appointments. So I Ride Petaluma and I Ride Rohnert Park started almost 15 years ago, where it's volunteers providing those rides. Again, one of the keys to this program, and I'm begging Cotati to actually step up and volunteer to drive other members of this community to doctor's appointments or social appointments. They're so valuable to us as we age in place. It's a very simple program to volunteer for. You get a Thursday in email of all the rides that are going out of Cotati, and volunteers pick which rides they're able to do, and you take that person. Sometimes you don't even have to stay and bring them home, but it's a great way for this community to volunteer. We also have an adult day program that is available to anybody living in Cotati. The adult day program is for individuals with dementia or Alzheimer's who have a caregiver at home who needs a respite. The Adult Day program runs Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. There's social activities. Monday, they were learning how to sing Pink Pony Club. There's activities for them to do. They get our nutrition meals that are available, and they actually give that caregiver the respite. The other program that's available to anybody living in Cotati is our caregiver support group. This is a group of individuals who are taking care of loved ones who are aging in place, maybe dementia or Alzheimer's. It's run by 2 clinical counselors from our counseling clinic, but it really is an opportunity for caregivers to find peace with other people who are dealing with the same issues. And if you've ever been a caregiver, you know and recognize how hard it is. And sadly, it's usually our caregivers who pass away before our loved ones with dementia or Alzheimer's. Next slide, please. So our Bounty Farm is a production farm in downtown Petaluma, and it's a great place to come and visit. But there are programs that are available outside of the farm that are available to anybody who is living in Cotati. Our Farmers Market Life program is a partnership with USDA, hopefully it stays intact, UC Davis, and what it is at any of the farmers markets throughout Sonoma County, you can take your EBT or your CalFresh or food stamps, a lot of people know it as that, and go to the farmers market. You can say to the person who's running the stand at the farmer's market, who's a PPSC employee, and say, I want to take $10 off my CalFresh. We take $10 off, but we give you $20 worth of coupons to use at the farmer's market to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables. Changing how we think about access to fresh fruits and vegetables is so important. And the other beauty of this program is our partnership with UC Davis. We are actually able to pay the farmers the value of the food that they are growing instead of asking them to give it away, which is what happens at many of the programs. We also have a program, again, available to anybody in Cotati through our Bounty Farm called the Bounty Hunters. And what the Bounty Hunters do is you sign up to be a volunteer, you get an email that says, we're harvesting lemons at this address in Cotati at 10 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, show up with your gloves. We harvest those and then we get them into the food distribution, whether it be through food giveaways, or even at farm stands, we can just hand it out and you can just take as many as you need. It's a great way to volunteer. It's a great way to not let food waste on the vine. The other thing that we have starting, well, we have a spring harvest actually happening at our farm right now, but we have a sliding scale farm stand, which is in downtown Petaluma. Anybody can come. It's pay what you want, pay what you have, pay what you can, and you get access to fresh fruits and vegetables that are available throughout our farm. Another opportunity, so many youth are looking for opportunities to volunteer, and yes, we'd love to have adults at the Bounty Farm, but most of the volunteers at that program are youth. Saturdays, they start as early as 9 o'clock. They plant, they grow, they harvest, they understand the value of food distribution, and it's a great way for young people to get involved and get their volunteer hours. Next slide. Okay, our community counseling clinic. I'm so proud of this counseling clinic. When I started 21 years ago, we had 2 therapists in it. It's now one of the largest counseling clinics in Sonoma County. It is sliding scale. We can take Medi-Cal. We have programs with Child Protective Services where they refer young people to our counseling programs or their abusers. Often, we can see both. We have evidence-based programs like Girls Circle and Project Success. Girls Circle is an empowerment program, and we work with the high schools and often we get students who are referred. We've had our first Girls Circle meet at Roanoke Park People's Services Center. This last week was the first session. Girls, and we heard it earlier, being a young woman is hard. And being nice to everybody is even harder. And with the girls' circle, often it's young people who are referred from school administrators or educators, and they've been in fights or been in trouble, and they don't want to send them to juvenile hall. They can refer them into girls' circle. It's an evidence-based program, 100% paid by Sonoma County Office of Education for the youth in our community. It's an 8-week series, and it really empowers young women to find themselves. I always love when a circle starts at our office because I get to meet these young girls the first time. You go out into the lobby, and they can't even look at each other. They can't even stand to be in the same space with them. 2 weeks in, they're walking down Petaluma Boulevard in T-shirts they've designed for each other and are empowering each other. It's an amazing program that really does hold up the value of young women in our community. And Project Success, again, an evidence-based program, as are most of our programs, is a program that helps young people with addiction issues, whether it be cigarette, vape, drugs, and or alcohol. The Project Success is an empowerment program that really helps to help these young people find tools to get them out of the addiction cycle and then empower them to go on and find other things. Next slide, please. Okay, our guaranteed basic income. So our guaranteed basic income, one of the programs that we have and we're part of as the ARPA money that was left over, we were one of the recipients to actually hand out the Guaranteed Basic Income Program. And that was 2 years pilot program here in Sonoma County. It actually was the largest in California. And we had 13 families from Cotati who participated in partnership with Petaluma People Services Center. Young families with children under 5, very, very low income. They were able to get these dollars and do with it whatever they want. Naysayers will tell you, oh, they're just buying drugs, you know, they're just buying hot rods. That's not what they were doing. Most of them were going back to school. Most of them were paying for childcare so that they could keep their job and stay employed. And we got to see the value of these guaranteed basic incomes. A little secret is because we were able to run that guaranteed basic income program, the state of California has asked us, and we're one of the few, to apply for a guaranteed basic income program that will be Sonoma County-wide for seniors. And we're so excited. We can hardly wait to send in our request for funding, and hopefully we'll be launching that, and I'll be back here next year telling you got to get your seniors signed up. The other program that we have the Day Labor Center in Petaluma. We will be opening up a location soon, and it'll be a location where Cotati can refer their day laborers down to Petaluma, and they'll be able to get OSHA training and jobs and all of those things that we need to make sure those individuals who are doing that kind of work. One of the things we've done in our pilot program with our day labor is we've really decreased wage theft, which is really a big issue for day laborers, and so we continue to expand that. And then another program is our RISE program, which is a youth employment program. It's a youth employment program that is available to youth who've dropped out of school, maybe are parenting, maybe part of our Project Success and have drug and alcohol issues. Again, it is countywide. Our case managers work with these young people to get them on the right track, get them back into maybe getting their GED, getting them job experiences, working with them in order for them to actually get jobs and career opportunities that they want to do. A little side story, a couple years ago in our RISE program, we had 3 young women had dropped out of school. One was using, one was abused by a parent. They had some pretty rough stories. They came through our RISE program, and one of the things that they did was, as part of their job experience, they were actually able to use their creative skills and learn how to do and be muralists. Their next job was working with me directly, and I was able to tap into my past experiences in the .com world, and we taught them how to organize themselves, set up an LLC, and you may see these young women painting murals all over Sonoma County now because they have created an employment opportunity for themselves using their art and the skills that they've learned through the RISE program. Next slide, please. Okay, and housing. So housing, is always really hard, and it's really, really difficult. I will tell you that our housing hub is based in Rohnert Park, and if you have an individual in your community who is precariously housed, they can call and make an appointment to meet with Bianca, who's bilingual, bicultural, and has been unhoused herself at a certain point in her life. She will help with housing navigation. She will help get you on the coordinated intake. She will work with all of the different housing services available. PPSC is able to use CalAIM as a housing placement opportunity, so someone who's extremely low income, who is precariously housed, not able to pay their rent. Now CalAIM, or your Medi-Cal, will cover some of your housing costs if you qualify, and so we're able to do that. And then we have another program that's countywide called Bridge the Gap. Bridge the Gap had been pilot for 5 years in Petaluma, and we are 1 year into a pilot with the county. Any senior 60 and older who needs a little help with their rent. So what happens with rent, especially if you're in low-income senior housing or a mobile home park, is that your rent continues to go up, even if there's a rent moratorium. If you're in low-income senior housing, because how they patch it together, the rent goes up, and your Social Security doesn't catch up. At a certain point, their Social Security may catch up. What we do is we bridge that gap before that Social Security comes up, and we're able to make a year's worth of payment to a landlord on behalf of a senior tenant, 60 and older. We have 3 at one of the mobile home parks here in Cotati who's using the Bridge the Gap to be able to stay in their place, to be able to continue to live it how they want to live. Next slide. I think I'm almost done, aren't I? Oh, one that we're very, very proud of. The chief and your city manager and I have been working really, really, really hard on the South County Safe Team. We're calling it the South County Safe Team because Petaluma, Rohnert Park, Cotati, and Sonoma State University have come together and said, we are better together, we're more effective together, and we're more efficient together. It's just really important for you to understand the number of people that the Safe Team touches. These are calls that come into dispatch that are mental health in nature, sometimes well checks, but people who are in crisis, maybe an unsheltered person that somebody calls 911 because they see them wandering down the street. Instead of sending and using valuable police resources, we're able to send our crisis team. The crisis team is made up of a crisis worker and an EMT, and they go out and they respond to these individuals to get them connected to all of the services that are available to them. I pulled numbers from July 2024 to December 2024, or into January 2025. The combined team of the Rohnert Park Cotati SSU team and Petaluma responded to over 5,000 calls that came through dispatch. Those are 5,000 calls that your police department would have to respond to. Those are 5,000 calls that are taking them away from policing and doing that kind of work. And the crisis team is able to connect these individuals to services. The other important component of this crisis intervention that a lot of people don't talk about, but I feel is really, really important, is the number of diversions that we're actually able to happen. So the combined team had, during that same time frame, 82 diversions from emergency departments. So if you're somebody who is in a mental health crisis, the last place you want to be is in an emergency room. It's chaotic, there's nobody who really can treat you, and sometimes you'll just stay there for 72 hours and then you're released and you don't have access to anything else, you're just released. And so with our emergency diversion, our team works with our navigator to get you connected to additional services, whether it be services at Petaluma People Services Center at our counseling clinic, whether it's transporting you to the Crisis Stabilization Unit at Sonoma County, which again saves police time and resources because they don't have to take them up to the Crisis Stabilization Unit, or our new partnership with Kaiser and Providence, where if we're bringing somebody in who needs mental health services at their hospital, we can call ahead and they put a bed aside, and that individual gets taken right to a bed. They are not in the emergency room where it's always distracting. It's the way we want to treat somebody who is in mental health crisis, and it's so important. Another important fact is that we've had 31 jail diversions. Jail diversions take a long, long time. Ask a police chief how long it takes to take somebody up to the jail, put them in the jail, and 9 times out of 10 have them back in your community in the next sometimes 8 hours. Our diversions keep these individuals out of jail, get them connected to all of our other services that are available. And again, we have 95, so we have a huge diversion program. And tomorrow we are going to be negotiating a contract with Sonoma County for youth who are in probation, who are going to be reentering. PPSC is going to be running the reentry program, and we're really excited about that. The other thing that's really, really important is ambulance diversions. Those ambulance diversions for anybody who actually has to use them, and if they have insurance, it's, say you're a Kaiser patient, and we can take you to Kaiser and not have to have you use an ambulance, that's going to save the individual dollars on having to cover that cost, because even though you have insurance, you're still going to pay a lot for an ambulance kind of pick up and drop off at a hospital. Our ambulance diversions are really, really important. Those ambulance diversions also play very, very importantly into those who are unhoused. Many of those who are unhoused, there's no place for them to go, and if an ambulance shows up, they have to take them to a hospital. They don't have any leeway to take them where maybe they have put together their care plan and they want to go to their sister's house, or maybe they have put together a plan where they just need to go to the health center and get important services. Speaking of health center, one of the things that we have started on Mondays from 10 to noon at Roanoke Park People Services Center, which is on Hunter. Providence has their medical van. Anybody who is not insured or a senior who doesn't want to go to the hospital to get their blood pressure check or their blood check, they can come Mondays 10 to 12. They don't have to make an appointment, and Providence will see them and hopefully get them connected into mental health services. Next slide, please. Okay, resources for youth. I guess I'm not done. There's so much. Our RISE program, our diversion program is expanding now, and we'll be meeting with your chief to talk about how the police department can take a youth who would normally go to juvenile hall and put them in our diversion program, where they get 8 weeks of programming with the officer, with our staff, and with the family. There's always our Mentor Me program. We have Mentor Me at Roanoke Park Cotati School District now. Mentor Me is a mentoring program where a youth, usually an at-risk young person, first, second, and third grade, are assigned to a mentor who meets with them 1 hour a week. 1 hour a week is all we ask. We ask that you make a 2-year commitment. I will tell you right now, everybody who makes that 2-year commitment stays until those young people graduate from high school and sometimes the junior college and even Cal Berkeley. They stay with those young people because it makes a difference. Next slide, please. And now I'm done, because you matter. You Matter Cotati, and it's really, really important. I brought some of these You Matter cards. These are not cards for you to hand out. These are cards for you to carry in your bag or in your wallet, and when you run into somebody in the grocery store or in the community, you take it out and you say, scan the QR code. It's going to take you to Petaluma People Services Center, and you're going to get access to all of the programs that are available to everybody in Cotati and everybody in our community, because you do matter. I'll leave these right. That's it, I think, right? That's it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And before you go, I'll just check whether there are questions from council members.
No questions, but thank you so much for the presentation. There's a lot there that, I didn't know that you guys did, and so I really appreciate you coming and sharing all that information with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Vice Mayor is like, you've got to get in front of our council.
Oh, thank you. You're a woman after my own heart. So I met with you a few months ago. It seems like a few months ago, and I learned so much from you that I said, you have to come to our city council and talk to us, because there's so many programs and services available to Cotati residents that I wasn't aware of before. And I would like to, work with you and see. I know we talked about maybe a little hub here once a week or something.
Once
just
a
so that-
week, we can probably figure something out.
Yeah,
Yes.
something like that, so that Cotati residents can have a place to go and ask about these services and how they can connect. I'm just really excited. I learned more today than when we first met. Even then, I took copious notes, but I just appreciate you and all your work, and I look forward to any work here with Cotati and all the residents.
Yeah, and
thank
we
you so
don't
much.
even need to have space, because I'm now the proud owner of a bookmobile. So we can just bring our intergenerational bookmobile up and park it and meet with residents of Cotati. We're happy to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I'll just add my thanks. I certainly learned a lot about your amazing services. I knew about a bunch of them, but I'll know a lot more. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right, we will move on to approval of the final agenda. Are there changes proposed?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would just propose that on the regular calendar that we move item 13C to the front of the regular calendar.
So the proposal is to move 13C up to 13A, basically. Move it ahead of the other regular calendar items. Any questions before I open that for public comment? Okay, because we are proposing to adjust the agenda from what was published, we'll open this for public comment. So is there anybody wishing to comment on approval of the final agenda with that change? Seeing nobody in the chambers, let's check with Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment on this item. Seeing no hands, Mayor Ford, that will end public comment.
Okay, so back to council. Since we're making a change, I'm going to ask for a motion and a vote to approve the final agenda with that change.
Move to approve the final agenda with the changes that have been suggested.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 3-0. All right, so we'll move on now to citizen business and public comment for consent calendar items. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any items listed on the consent calendar or any matters not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider items or take action on any item not listed on the agenda. Pursuant to City Council Policy 2023-01, comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda, and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the consent calendar. The mayor may extend the time limit for a reasonable time when a disability accommodation has been requested. To facilitate public comment, the timer indicator lights will display yellow when there are 30 seconds remaining and red when time has expired. I have one speaker card from George Barrich. I don't see him in the room. Okay, anybody else wishing to speak during citizen business or on the consent calendar? Again, not seeing anybody in the chambers. Let's check with Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment on this item. Mayor Ford, that will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the consent calendar. There's just one item. Does any council member wish to pull an item? The item? No. All right, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 3-0. All right. We will move on to item 12, which is a direction on future agenda items. Anybody have an item they wish to request for a future agenda?
Not tonight.
Okay. So we'll move on to 13C, review proposed Sonoma Water Transmission System budget for fiscal year 2025-26 and provide direction to city's Water Advisory Committee member. And I have been assured by that member, who is too ill to be here tonight, that she will watch the entire recording of the meeting so she knows everything that we say. So we'll begin with a staff report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Craig Scott, Public Works Director, City Engineer. Tonight's item, as you had mentioned, Mayor, is to provide direction to the city's Water Advisory Committee representative on the proposed Sonoma Water 25-26 budget. The Water Advisory Committee, or WAC as it's referred to, is to vote on the proposed budget at its upcoming April 7th meeting. The city receives about 2/3 of its water supply from Sonoma Water through its aqueduct. The rest is from our city wells. Contractors, entities, are entities which contract with Sonoma Water to receive water supply. They comprise the Water Advisory Committee and a Technical Advisory Committee, so the WAC and the TAC. Each year, Sonoma Water is required to present the budget to the TAC and then the WAC, with each body taking an advisory vote on the proposed budget. The TAC held their vote on March 3rd and unanimously recommended it for support by the WAC at its upcoming meeting. The TAC formed a budget subcommittee and met with Sonoma Water several times in January and February. In response to questions by the TAC subcommittee, Sonoma Water staff provided a January draft and 2 draft budget packets in February, each one being revised in response to TAC member questions. The TAC's intent is to gain more transparency in the process. It's pretty single-minded about that. The number of, for example, the number of FTEs added each year, for example, and what their roles are. FTEs, full-time employees. So as you know, the water agency adding staff, what are they adding the staff for? Because that's a driver in costs. Have projected schedules being met for capital projects that they said where they were going to do. Is the planned list of projects and studies realistic based on past experience, and ensuring expenses that should not be charged to the contractors are not being charged. Subcommittee does not dictate the list of critical projects listed by Sonoma. That's what Sonoma Water does. They identify what is critical and what high priority projects are. Any reduction in budget is due, in our understanding and our intent as this budget TAC, is to ensure that the list of planned efforts better match the being realistic. Okay. Payments to Sonoma Water comprise 30.5% of the city's water utility budget. So it's really important for us, the city, to make sure that those those costs are accounted for in our budget. And we typically don't receive projections from the water agency on what their projected future increases are going to be. So we get out the crystal ball and we just try to guess. And that was the case this year up to February 25th, when we, this body, the council, approved the draft water and sewer rate study, which sets the program for increases over the next 5 years. Staff did not have a projection from Sonoma Water at that time. We received that 2 days later on February 27th. All right, so that is the challenge for us, is to project, because it's such a big chunk of our budget, what those projections are going to be. Jake Spalding is here, and Lynn Rosselli as well from Sonoma Water to explain the proposed budget and what are driving the costs. Jake.
Thank you, Craig. Sorry, I think I came up a little early, so. So Jake Spalding, I'm the finance manager with Sonoma Water. I am here with Lynn Rosselli, our financial services division manager. And I'm going to give you a brief overview of the proposed 25-26 budget and rates for the water transmission system, and then we can answer any questions that you might have at the end. So each year we do develop an annual budget that's got to meet the water transmission system's operations, maintenance, capital, as well as regulatory demands. And our system, similar to your system as well, is aging. So, there's a heightened need for infrastructure repairs as well as upgrades so that we can continually operate and maintain the system for everyone's benefit 24/7. Next slide, please. So the water transmission system has 3 main aqueducts. The Santa Rosa Aqueduct is shown in purple on this map, the Petaluma Aqueduct in blue, and the Sonoma Aqueduct in green. So this city is served from the Petaluma Aqueduct. They were constructed between 1959 and 1963, so they are starting to get up there in age. And each one of the water contractors is served primarily from one of these, and per the terms of the restructured agreement, you pay the rate associated with the aqueduct that you're served from. Next slide. So Sonoma Water, we are proud of the transparent and the collaborative process that we undertake annually. Each year we send a draft budget to the TAC Ad Hoc Budget Subcommittee in mid-January, and then we work with all the water contractors over the next couple of months before finally bringing it to our board in April for approval. Did want to say thank you to Craig and Angela as well for their participation in that subcommittee. And we do appreciate that the TAC also did recommend unanimously to support this budget. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, there are multiple funds in the water transmission system. It's not just one. The types of funds are shown on this screen. Each one of these has its own budget and rates, and then those are combined to make the composite rate that contractors pay based on which ones they benefit from. Next slide. So Sonoma Water, we face the same challenges that all the other utilities are facing, and then we also have some that are kind of unique to us. The unique one that it is to us is we do have a fully volumetric rate, and that means when water deliveries are low, as they have been the last several years, it does affect revenue coming in, it affects our fund balances, and it puts additional pressure on future year rate increases. We're all in the same boat. We all operate critical infrastructure. It's got to operate 24/7. It's integral to public health and public safety. And, our assets have been reliable for many decades, but they're starting to get up there in age, and so we're seeing increased costs there. Most of our facilities are 45 to 65 years old. About 40% of them only have 10 to 20% of their useful life remaining. And there's a high consequence for failure because we serve 600,000 residents. We use this analogy every year. It's not too different than owning an aging car. As the car gets older, your repair costs increase, and then eventually you're going to need to upgrade to a new car. So to address these challenges, Sonoma Water, we are working on an asset management program. We've conducted preliminary assessments of our transmission and distribution system assets as part of that. And not too surprisingly, a large portion of them are in less than adequate condition. We're also working on a 20-year comprehensive water master plan, and this plan is going to incorporate those condition assessments, other data from the asset management program, other planning studies we've done like hazard mitigation and resiliency studies. It's going to put it all together so that we get a better idea of what the system needs going forward, what that's going to cost, and how we can sequence it best. In addition to all that, we are subject to an array of natural hazards that are, could impact the system, primarily flood, fire, and earthquakes. Earthquakes are our biggest vulnerability. And the budget that we're presenting does take efforts to address all of these. Next slide. Sonoma Water, we're dedicated to serving the community, securing our future through responsible resource and environmental stewardship, doing technical innovation like weather forecasting, investing in critical infrastructure, as well as effective fiscal management. So, in collaboration with all the water contractors, we put up a couple slides that we've been achieving and continue to achieve. I'm not going to read them all out, but it's hazard mitigation, it's water resiliency, it's water conservation, water education, habitat enhancement related to the biological opinion. And if you have any questions on these, we did include more details in the budget packet, and you can also find more information on our website. Next slide. So in the 25-26 budget, in our capital program, we have hazard mitigation projects. You can see several of them listed on this slide. 2 of these projects are actually on the Petaluma Aqueduct, so they directly benefit the city. That's the Eli Booster Pump Station as well as the Wilford Booster Pump Station. We do our best to try and offset the cost to locals, to the local cost share always. So we have been able to get about $12.6 million in funding from FEMA for hazard mitigation projects over the last 10 years. And we're continuing to seek additional funding for these projects and others in future years. Next slide. In addition to hazard mitigation projects, the budget also has $9.97 million for other resiliency projects. You can see there's quite a few of them on this slide. Ones of note, there's the Santa Rosa Plain wells are on here. That's going to help us better respond to drought conditions if we have water supply shortages. Also, you'll see there's some things on there like the water treatment system modernization project. That's a large multi-year, multi-phase project that's going to upgrade our infrastructure at the production facilities. So overall, the capital program is about $18.3 million. Next slide. On the operations and maintenance side, in addition to routine maintenance, we also do projects. Some of the highlights here you can see, I won't read them all, but the Aqueduct Cathodic Protection Program, that protects the pipelines from corrosion. We have the Tank Recoat Program, which is a 10-year effort, it's over $88 million, as well as emergency inventory procurement, so that we have the supplies on hand if we have a large seismic event, so that we can fix the pipes as quick as possible. Next slide. On the sub-fund side, these fund things like the biological opinion, water supply planning, and water conservation. Some highlights here, we have completed about 5 miles of the Dry Creek Habitat Enhancement Project. We do get cost savings there because the Army Corps picks up 65% of the cost share. Sonoma Water and the Sonoma Marin Water Saving Partnership also continue to implement a really robust and successful water conservation and education program. It wins awards every year, and it keeps attracting federal and state dollars that's helping to offset the local cost for that. Next slide. So when you roll all these different funds together, we get a total budget of about $82 million. That is being offset by about $21 million in grants, use of fund balance and bond proceeds. Of note, this is $7.6 million more than the prior fiscal year's budget, and that's really due to the O&M and the capital needs of the system. Did also want to point out that the capital program is fully funded by grants, loans, bond proceeds, and use of fund balance. There is a need this year, though, to do additional bonding. So we are planning on issuing new bonds of about $33 million that are going to fund the capital program for the next 3 years. And you can see the effect of that on the debt service line on this slide. Of note, also, this will be the first time that we're bonding for Petaluma Aqueduct to fund the Eli Booster Station and the Wilford Booster Station projects. And that is one of the reasons that your rate is a little bit higher than the other aqueducts this year. Next slide. Just to show you where our costs go, operations and maintenance is our biggest category. It's about 56% of our budget. That's followed by capital projects at 22%, and then the sub-funds and debt service round out the remainder. Next slide. Okay, so I mentioned the fully volumetric rate and how that's a challenge for us. This is a simplified example, but we follow the restructured agreement for water supply, which is the agreement signed by us and all the water contractors. And what it basically says is that we take the cost of operations and maintenance of the system, and we have to divide that by the amount of water sold. And what that does, and if you can click a couple times to bring it up, it gives us a cost per acre foot. Once again, this is simplified, but what it says is that we have to take the lesser amount of either the last 12 months of deliveries or the 3-year annual average. And I think 3 more clicks, please. So what this shows you really is just, the fully volumetric rate. It's an example of, when deliveries are low, it puts additional pressure on our rate increase. This fiscal year, we are using the 3-year annual average number. That's the 42,407. And of note, this is 1% less than the number that we had in the prior fiscal year budget, so it did have an impact on the rate increase. Next slide, please, and one more. Just to show you how quickly the rate can change based on the deliveries. This year, we're computing that 500 acre-feet of deliveries is roughly a 1.3% change in the rate increase. So you can see how, going down just from last year, about 400 acre-feet, that added more than 1% to the rate. Next slide. So, we understand rate increases are not not something anyone wants to face. Sonoma Water, we did do our best to try and prioritize projects, find savings where we could, and help reduce the rate. We started with our staff looking at how we could pare things back, and prioritizing projects. Only the highest priorities got advanced. And then we worked with the TAC Budget Ad Hoc Subcommittee to make further revisions. In the end, we did identify $11.3 million in non-routine, lower priority maintenance projects that could be pushed from this fiscal year's budget, as well as roughly $94 million in capital projects that could be reduced from this year's budget, as well as the 3-year bond window, because that does affect the debt service that would be paid this fiscal year. The result of this was we were able to get rate increases, which originally were forecast around 40%, down to the numbers that you see on the screen, with Petaluma being 10.76. Next slide. So just to look a little bit closer at the different line items that make up the budget, you can see here that it is based on the 3-year annual average. These are the different funds and the different charges that come into play. They range from 7.6 to 10.76%. That 10.76 is the proposed rate for the Petaluma Aqueduct. And some of the things that go into this rate, and the reason that it is higher than the others, are the bond charge that you see there at $15.66 to fund those capital projects that I mentioned, as well as the discretionary aqueduct capital charge. And this charge is a charge that the contractors can elect to put on themselves to help build fund balance and act as a rate stabilization tool, so that you don't have to bond for funds for capital projects at a later date. It was at 0 the last couple of years for the Petaluma Aqueduct, and now it's going back up to 10, so that's the reason, one of the reasons that the rate is higher for this aqueduct. This budget, it is really essential so that we can continue to operate and maintain our critical infrastructure, and provide reliable water for more than 600,000 residents. Next slide. Oh, and I'm going to invite Lynn up to talk about our long-range financial plan.
Good evening, Lynn Rosselli, Financial Services Division Manager. We annually provide the water contractors with the long-range financial plan to give them an idea or an example of what we project the rates might be based on the suite of projects in the long-range financial plan. And this assumes 1% water demand growth, and that it basically is tracking with what we have been seeing historically. We project that 10.6% rate increases, given the 1% growth in water and the suite of projects, is the likely rate increase, but we will update this and revise it annually for the water contractors. Next slide, please. This slide we show every year it gives an example of how our rates compare to other wholesale water contractors in the Bay Area. And we're on the far left. We still have the lowest water rates of them all. It's not an apples-to-apples comparison because they're different. They have different rate structures and they're different sizes. However, we still have been able to maintain lower rate increases and rates than other wholesalers. Next slide, please. So the Technical Advisory Committee, as Jake mentioned, voted unanimously to recommend the budget to the Water Advisory Committee on March 3rd. The Water Advisory Committee votes on April 7th. And we're here today to request that you make a recommendation to your Water Advisory Committee member. And it will be taken to our board on April 22nd. For our board's approval. Next slide, please. And we like to show this slide. We provide links to our various videos that we've made to help explain the maintenance that we're doing, to give some context around all of the work that we're doing. And they're mostly about some of our primary projects, such as the tank maintenance program and the aqueduct protection program and Dry Creek habitat restoration. So it's always helpful to have, we want to make it available to the public and make sure they understand the context behind how things work. Next slide. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. So I'll ask my fellow council members if we have some questions. Councilmember Harvey.
I have a couple questions. One on the tank recoats and maintenance. What how does that change the life expectancy of the tank by us investing in that? Does it give us 10 more years, 20 more years, 5 years? Do you have an estimate on that? Because I know it's pretty expensive and they're out for a while, so.
Yeah, it's very expensive, and we're on a 10-year cycle. So we're expecting that within 10 years, each tank will need to be recoated.
And
again.
Okay, so, but does recoating it extend the life of the tank?
It keeps the tank from rusting and not being able to function. So it is, it doesn't extend the useful life. It's like your house. You paint your house,
okay.
right? You paint your house and it keeps the wood from, it protects the wood or whatever material you have, brick, wood, whatever. But it doesn't, that doesn't necessarily say that your house is going to last longer than it would have. But so for the tanks, we're making sure that it lasts its useful life, which is anticipated to be, I think we said, we put down 50 years as an estimate that was based on some FEMA recommendations. But we believe we can get more than 50 years out of the tanks.
Okay.
Probably 100 years or more.
And I'll just add, we both have the accounting brains, so we're thinking of useful life and whatnot. But
Right.
yeah, I would say as a simple answer, yes, it does. It allow us to use the asset longer, so it does buy us time in that sense.
Yeah, I just was curious because, at some point they need to be replaced, and are we kind of, robbing Peter to pay Paul, and we should be replacing them rather than just recording?
Yeah, we're not at that point yet.
Okay.
And we expect that over the next 10 years, we're going to be recoding again. And some of the tanks are I don't know, I don't remember the list. I don't have them all memorized, but I think the useful lives, they were installed anywhere between,
yeah.
50-ish and 1970.
So some of them are maybe at the end of their useful life.
Yes, but if you talk to our engineers, they can last forever.
Okay.
If we keep painting them.
Okay.
Right.
And that's kind of what I
Yes.
was wondering.
Yeah.
And then secondly, the long-range financial plan looks pretty bleak. I mean, going up, almost 11% every year is, hard for us to, go to constituents on. So is there anything that we can be doing to affect that?
So the long-range financial plan is very sensitive to water deliveries. And unfortunately, in the past few years, we've seen very flat water deliveries, and water demand's been very flat. We're not expecting that is going to be, we're not seeing a trend towards that increasing a lot. But increased water deliveries will certainly bring those rate increases down. Because as Jake mentioned, the volumetric rate is very sensitive to the quantity of deliveries, the water demand. And it also depends on the capital projects, the suite of capital projects. And we revise it every year, and like Jake mentioned, we pushed out $88 million in construction costs for projects, out beyond the 3-year timeframe of the bond just to get the rate increase down. So the message is not, we don't want the message to be don't conserve. We want people to conserve water. However, it is creating, with a fully volumetric rate, it is creating that tension, right? Because it does affect the rate increases. And it causes us to defer more projects. Each time when, there's a drought, we'd have to push more projects out on the timeline. So we have to reprioritize and keep pushing them out on the timeline.
Another thing, we do always seek offsetting funding. So,
Right.
Anytime that we are seeking grant funding for a project, support around that can be helpful.
Yeah, well, that ought to get interesting pretty
Yes,
quickly.
Yes.
So this question, I think, is more for Craig. Craig, as you pointed out, we recently saw our draft rate study, and as you pointed out, we didn't have these numbers. Are we going to adjust that based upon this long-range financial plan? Because my recollection is that it was only raised for a couple of years and then it dropped off, and it doesn't look like this is going to drop off.
Well, we're locked in for now with this Prop 218 process. So when we come back in May with the public hearing, it's going to be, we can't make any adjustments higher. We can adopt rates at the level that's in the draft report that was approved or lower. And you're right, we had 12% the first year and 6% for the subsequent years, because that's the information we had at the time. The information we had that was presented tonight was given to staff a week and a half ago. So it was well after our draft report had been drafted and approved. It costs money for us to come back every single year to adjust our rates, and so we say 2 to 3 years. So I think the real question is, in 2 years' time, when do we do the rate review? Can we absorb the difference between 6 and whatever the actual rates are? It might be 10.6%. We're hoping that that's a max, and it would be something lower than that. But I think that's the question: is did the other assumptions in the rate study come in higher, lower? How does it all blend out, and can we absorb that type of an increase? So it's unfortunate we got the numbers after the fact, but we're in the same boat as Rohnert Park and Santa Rosa. Everybody's like scrambling right now with that, and we're just having to make do with the rate program that we adopted.
Yeah, my concern is that now we have this, and year after next, we're going to be back here again and having to do it again. I understand what you're saying, we've already put it out there, but does it make sense to move forward with that or redo the process now that we have better information than we had when we did that? My concern is that we put out there is only going to be good for a year, because if these numbers are what these numbers are, those rates are not going to meet these increases.
It's a third of our, roughly a third, right, of our budget. So it's substantial, but it's not, it could be manageable. What we could do is revisit it next year and make an adjustment and stay on track. Or see if we can skip next year and do it the following year and still stay on track. So we have opportunities to adjust our rates.
Okay, because I just, I feel like we kind of originally started on we'll do it every 5 years, but things keep changing so rapidly that 5 years isn't cutting it. And so I just want to be more realistic about that. And unfortunately, we got better information after the fact. And on the flip side of that, I am concerned that, as you pointed out, our infrastructure is aging and that we keep pushing that out. So again, part of being realistic with this is accounting for the fact that we can't keep pushing it out because, as you pointed out, we don't want to get into an emergency situation where something breaks and we have to address it. And things are not getting cheaper, which is the other thing that we've noticed. So, all right, I guess there's nothing we can do.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Lemus.
Yes, I had the same page kind of highlighted for myself, the concerns about the range and the trajectory and I know you're keeping it real with like the costs and the maintenance and operations of the system, but it just feels like 10.6 per year. And it sounded like what I heard you say is maybe by expending more water, that might bring the rates down, which kind of seems a little odd, but But,
Right, well, we're bound by the restructured agreement, right? And the restructured agreement specifies a fully volumetric rate, so, but vast majority of our costs are fixed charges. So we still have pipes and pumps and tanks and whatnot, and they all have to be, taken care of and upgraded and improved. And so we don't have, we don't have a fixed rate that could help us buffer against these changes in deliveries. And we've seen a downward trend in water deliveries, mostly in the most recent past. We put in a 1% increase in demand, and it's based on the suite of projects, right? That is based on the suite of projects that is there right now. That suite of projects may change. The schedule for those projects may change. We're also doing this, as Jake mentioned, the 20-year water comprehensive plan. That's probably going to, bring out a long list of capital improvement projects that need to be done, that are going to be added to it. So we don't want to be too optimistic and say, oh, sure, no problem, we'll get down to 4%, when we realistically don't feel as though we don't feel that that's realistic at this point.
Yeah.
Given the current circumstances.
But once again, we reevaluate this every year. So next year, it might not say 10.6% because the situation may have changed. And when we do sell more water than budgeted, that helps build fund balance, which we then use to offset the rate increase next year. Unfortunately, the last 3 years, with 3 years in a row, we came in under budget, $12.4 million, $12.8 million short. So, it really ate into a lot of our fund balances, so we couldn't use that to help offset the rate increase.
And the way this model works, we're not trying to look at what savings we can have in any one year. We're trying to smooth the rate, right? So we're not trying to say, oh, well, maybe next year we could do 6%, but then the year after, oh my gosh, we're going to be at 12%, right? So it's an effort to smooth it out. But when we do the annual budget, we try our best to to defer and reduce costs as reasonable, and look at the long-range financial plan and make sure it's not having a significant impact on that as well.
Yeah. It just feels like, I know you're keeping it real with the costs and everything. It just feels like with a lot of the needs at the Sonoma Water, with the water infrastructure, and even our own city infrastructure with the water, so I feel like we're caught in a catch-22.
Yes.
And how do we kind of look at this as a council, kind of moving forward, because it's something that, some serious things that we'll be facing down the line, so.
We're all in the same boat.
Right.
The industry as a whole, we all installed these systems at the same time, and we're kind of entering a new realm where a lot of these big things we installed are at the end of their life and need to be replaced.
Okay. Yeah, anything else I had was redundant, I think. Thank you.
Okay. Just one brief question. How sensitive is this rate to bond funding rates? Like, you got a big bond planning to go out next year, and interest rates aren't the best right now.
Interest rates actually might not be as bad as you think.
Okay, great.
We've been talking with our bond counsel, and they are very favorable. We do have a AAA bond rating, so we are able to get good rates out there. There's a lot of uncertainty. We're not selling today, so that could change.
Yep.
But I was surprised by the rates we were anticipating to get.
And I think we assumed, for the purposes of this budget, 4.3%. Again, we talked with our financial advisors and our bond counsel. We assumed 4.3% and a 20-year bond cycle, which is within the realm of, again, we don't have a crystal ball either, right? We can't predict what's going to happen in the next 6 to 9 months, but that's what the budget's based on.
Okay, thanks. If there are no more council questions, I'll invite you to sit down and I'll take public comment. Great. So I'll open this for public comment. As a reminder, our action tonight is to provide direction to our Water Advisory Committee member on supporting action to take when the WAC considers the budget. Anybody in the council wishing to speak on this item? In the chambers, Okay, not seeing anyone. Let's go to Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. The first hand is from Neil Hancock. Neil, you have the floor.
Yes, hello, Council. A very good forward-looking budget. Really appreciate the detail in here. In the packet, it's a bit hard to follow the budget. There seems to be some mysterious splits across the detail on the page. Probably Anyway, I don't know why that's happened, but overall, I have been going to the WAC and the TAC meetings and very impressed with the overall process that's going on. But I would like to point out that there's a separate process that's also happening with the Eel River Potter Valley Bypass MOU and Sonoma County discussions. The cities, really, the contractors, seem to have been behind closed doors. Humboldt County is the only place that has given a discussion on this, and there, I put it in the letter to you, a link to where you can actually see the whole of the discussion going on. Now, I'm sort of suggesting that what's happening is you're getting a little bit of smoke being blown in your eyes by Sonoma Water on this subject. And how does this work? Well, October 24th in 2023, there was a letter that was sent round to Cotati Council and others, and it said, halting any diversions, even temporarily, would directly threaten the drinking water supply for more than 97,000 people living in the Russian River communities, and would make the drinking water supply for 600,000 people additional people less reliable. April 23rd, last year, in 2024, there was an ask for $50,000, approval of agreements to coordinate and fund legal research and analysis regarding the impact of Potter Valley project diversions. Cotati's share, I believe, was only $6,250 on this. So my question that I would ask of this budget, and I do appreciate it's a very good place that Sonoma Water's coming from, at direction probably from the supervisors that it reports to. We are trying to do well by the whole of the county, but for Sonoma Water contractors, I think the question is we hope that there isn't any of our rates going into any proposed bypasses for the future. There is a group of people that I think who probably would benefit, and they need to be organized, the agricultural community. But for this budget before you, I'd ask the question, in the proposed rates study that has all the line items, packet page 226, which line item charges do the costs of managing Lake Sonoma and Lake Mendocino during their water supply phase fit? Now, I'm not anticipating it's a big item that's there, but I'm just asking that question. Where does the management of those lakes, when Sonoma Water is responsible for the two of them, fit? So I'll take my answers offline. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There are no further hands, Mayor Ford. That will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. So bringing it back to council, I'm going to ask if the Sonoma Water representatives can address the general question of where did Upper Valley work appear in the budget, and what role do our rates
They do not appear in the water transmission budget, so the water contractors are not paying for it. There's nothing in the water transmission budget that relates to operating or maintaining Warm Springs Dam or the reservoirs themselves. It's out of a different fund. We have a separate fund, and in that fund is funded by property taxes, as well as North Marin Water and Marin Municipal pay into that fund because they don't pay the property taxes on the dam. So in lieu of the property taxes on the dam, they're paying into that fund. So they do see some costs in that fund for Potter Valley, but the rest of the water contractors are not currently paying for it. However, the restructured agreement does not preclude charges for work on the Potter Valley. And I don't, but there's just so much uncertainty right now. I have no idea, what the plan is for funding it going forward. But it's not in the 25-26 budget for sure.
Great, thank you. Before they sit down, any follow-ups or anything? Okay, thank you. All right, so bringing this back to council, discussion of direction we should give to our Water Advisory Committee member.
No discussion. I'm ready. I think we discussed.
I had one other comment,
Okay,
if you want.
yeah,
So,
perfect.
if there aren't any others, the fully volumetric rate gets brought up a lot as somehow contributing to the rate increases. And unless I'm understanding something wrong, if there was some fixed, some volumetric components to the rate, the total cost would still be the same. And so the rate increases overall, the average would be the same increase. So we would not see the cost per acre foot change by as much, but that would be offset by an increase in fixed costs. And if we treat fixed costs to the contractors as fixed costs to the customers, then that would just be a more regressive form of rates to the customers that would reduce incentive to conserve by taking some of the cost off of the volumetric part, off the use, and just put it on a fixed cost. So I understand that it makes the rates look like they're going up and down. Maybe, well, they never go down. Makes it look like they're going up more, and that's probably not true that they never go down. I don't want to overstate, but I sometimes get the feeling like some people want to blame the volumetric rate for the increases, but that's just not right. So the costs are going up, and I don't think there's a way out of that. So
It's just a method, and
Right.
it's just a calculation.
Right.
And I know it seems counterintuitive to people because we keep having all these conservation programs, and people are doing, an excellent job of conserving, and even, there's people that ask, well, there's all this building happening, and so then why is it still going down? But the reality is people are really doing a really good job with the programs that are being put in place to conserve water. But as Lynn pointed out, there are fixed costs that have to happen to maintain that infrastructure, and they have to be accounted for, so it's
Right.
tough.
it was fun to watch you try not to say, tell them to use more water. Nope, don't get to say that, because that's not really what we mean. Okay.
Would you like a motion?
Sure.
Okay. I make a motion providing direction to the City Water Advisory Committee member to endorse the proposed Sonoma Water fiscal year 25-26 water transmission system budget.
A second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that carries 3-0. Thank you. And if I just keep reading on the agenda, we're done, but, all right. Thank you so much for coming and spending your evening with us. We'll go on to item 13A now, the presentation of the general plan annual report. Start with the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. We have a PowerPoint presentation, and planning technician Eli Ariola will be doing the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Ford, council members, members of the public. Once again, my name is Eli Ariola, planning technician with the city, and tonight I'll be presenting the annual progress reports, beginning with the general plan annual progress report. Next slide, please. For some very general background, the general plan identifies the city's vision for future development and provides the framework for decision-making. The current general plan was adopted in 2015, and the general plan APR provides a status update on the progress in implementing the actions within 6 of the 7 elements of the general plan, exclusive of the housing element. And this annual progress report is due to both the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation and the State Department of Housing and Community Development by April 1st. Next slide, please. Within the general plan, each of the elements has a set of goals that are supported by objectives. Each objective has a set of policies and actions that are meant to implement the objective. The actions for each element are compiled into an implementation plan that staff has utilized as the format for the APR. To complete the APR, community development staff gathered information from each responsible city department regarding progress made on each action during 2024. Next slide, please, Kevin. There are two primary types of actions in the implementation plan: ongoing and project-oriented. The ongoing actions include city services, maintenance, partnerships, and data collection. Project-oriented actions include capital improvements, new programs, and coder policy updates. The level of specificity and complexity of each action varies, and this APR was presented to the Planning Commission on March 3rd and will be submitted to the state by April 1st, along with the housing element APR. And I will pass it off to Director Hausch for the next slide.
Thank you, Eli, Mayor, Council. This slide just wants to highlight a few things. Obviously, this is a progress report, so it's just kind of demonstrating where we are. And it's an interesting report to present. This is a newer requirement in that the general plan, as we talk about, it's the constitution for the city. So it's really a list of policies and actions that cut across all elements of the city. Every department that works for the city has pieces of this that they are tasked with implementing. Sometimes it's an individual effort, sometimes it's a combined effort, and these goals, objectives, policies, and actions are occasionally even identified as to be done by someone outside of the city. So it's worth just pointing out that it is somewhat of an aspirational document, but it highlights the tasks and responsibilities that we're all kind of trying to meet as we also implement the individual budget programs and the individual projects that we identify through the year. You know, the Chapter 11, the implementation chapter, has a complete and in progress kind of status, but it doesn't talk about things that are, some of these things are just going to be ongoing, so in progress, but also annually in perpetuity. And then also some of these we may have even moved on from. So it's worth highlighting that this general plan was adopted in 2015. Frankly, a lot of the outreach work that was done was 2013, 2014. And so some of the goals and tasks may be outdated, or our priorities may have shifted, and even others may be things that are beyond the city's control because the document is aspirational in some ways. So I just want to highlight that, just wanted to point that out as we move into reporting these things through the state. And as of right now, there are no carrots or sticks that the state are necessarily using this report for, but I do anticipate that to likely be changing as the state kind of starts to grapple with what this APR means to them and how they might be able to kind of leverage some of the reporting that we do as a city. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Eli.
All right. Planning Commission comments on the general plan APR generally focused on increasing community engagement and outreach within the following subtopics. The Planning Commission suggested an expansion of education and opportunities to grow food in Cotati through community gardens, increased farmer participation at markets, more educational opportunities, both generally and at the Veranda Folletti Ranch. The Planning Commission also asked if any Cotati-specific projects are addressed in the 2x2x2 meetings between Cotati, Runner Park, Sonoma State, and the Rancho Cotati School District. Commissioner Gilardi shared his experience of those meetings, and there was a suggestion for the group to meet quarterly and potentially rotate the location of the meetings to have more local influence on the agenda topics. And finally, the Planning Commission commented on the stated concern within the APR of the lack of participation at the area officer meetings and suggested a restructure of those meetings and an opportunity to provide community engagement and information at events such as a neighborhood block party. Next slide, please. And with that, it is recommended by the Community Development Department that the City Council review and accept the 2024 General Plan Annual Report. And Director Hausch and I are available for any questions. Thank you.
All right, any questions on the report? Go ahead, Councilmember Harvey.
Is it easier for you to have packet page number? Okay, so on package page number 51, it talks about as funding becomes available, cities should encourage Sonoma County Transit to provide more frequent headways, et cetera. There is work currently being done by SCTA on integrating the 3 Sonoma County services. And one of the things that they are looking at are the different overlaps in the routes and things. So right now it says it's on hold, but SCTA staff with their advisory groups and the 3 bus agencies are actively working on that, as well as the bigger aspects, including all with their mascots program, which is even bigger, including like the Golden Gate Transit and that. So they are definitely moving on some of those things.
So is the question, is the city engaged with those efforts?
Well, it says this is on hold. So, well,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
Or
a lot of
could it
these
be?
things say SCTA is doing it for us.
Ah, right.
So it says it's on hold, and I just, maybe you didn't know, or maybe you did know that they are actively working on it, and I just wanted to provide that information. And then on packet page 83, for the Veranda Fletty Ranch, we have specific individuals named in here, and I know that didn't ultimately work out. Should that be more generic, or should that be addressed? That was my question, because that relationship.
I hear what you're saying. We'll look at that and update it to be more clear, I understand.
Yeah. So those were my only things that I noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice
Sure.
Mayor Reyes.
Yeah, I have a few questions too. And maybe the information is somewhere else, like a parking assessment district. I was wondering what that looks like, but if it's somewhere else, I can go and research it. Parking assessment district. This is on page 54 of 626. It says not started, so I think it's something that's maybe in the works or later on down the road.
Yeah, so we have not started that. I will say the Santero Way specific plan, the adoption does require parking management plans with any project that moves forward. So we haven't implemented that specific line item, but we are trying to be thoughtful of parking, especially as some of the requirements are ratcheting down based on state law changes.
Okay. And then I had a question on packets, page 60, about the secondhand smoke ordinance. It says the smoke ordinance was adopted in fall of 2015, but I know we had an advocate here recently at a meeting. So I don't know if that impacts our cannabis businesses.
We've looked at the secondhand smoke ordinance through the lens of the cannabis businesses and made sure that we had flexibility in how they propose to operate while also maintaining our ordinance. And it's worth noting that our ordinance actually had a lot of input from the downtown bar owners at the time it was adopted. And there was specific concern over allowing some flexibility because a lot of their patrons chose to smoke. And so we actually had some kind of carve-outs already based on our ordinance that actually able to benefit our cannabis businesses as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, when the cannabis ordinances were updated to allow for the lounge, that issue specifically was explored and addressed.
Okay.
To the degree it needed to be, but as Director Hausch points out, there was already some flexibility in that ordinance.
Okay, on page 64, it was talking about SNAP EBT cards, working with our local stores and such to accept them. So do we have stores that don't accept SNAP or WIC here locally?
None that we're aware of. We
Okay.
haven't received any complaints.
Okay. And then also back to the farm, the Veranda Fletty Ranch farm, the second item there. I know in the past, in here it talks about how we are doing ongoing healthy eating, garden education. I know in the past, I know we changed operators too. We talked about tamale making or other kind of cultural collaborations or something, so I didn't know if that was something that was in the plan.
But I'll just say generally, all that stuff is definitely in the general, I mean, generally it's being planned for that type of activity. I can't think of a specific instructor that would be doing that right now that I'm aware of, but the licensees and us, when we're in regular conversations, we're looking for opportunities like that to bring new, hands-on education to the ranch.
Okay. But I do support some of the other things, like there were some SSU undertake projects, similar to some of the things that Elise was here talking about, maybe through our partnership that we can work on some of those items. On page 82 of 626, where it talks about identifying partnerships, opportunities between municipalities, other agencies, I wanted to add local tribal engagement in there. I think that, let me just make sure. Okay, I think that's probably all. Some of my other things were just about, I love certain things. I was making my own notes about things, so, okay. That's all that I had. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So my only question was about the Planning Commission sort of items they pulled out. Were those suggestions that the city going forward emphasize particular, pay particular attention to certain goals and actions in the general plan, or were they sort of musing on new goals and actions that ought to be in whenever we next update the general plan?
Yeah, my read was kind of the Planning Commission input on contemporary interpretation of how these goals might be implemented. So just some ideas to expand on some of the things we've been doing and kind of looking at it through today's lens, even though some of these goals were kind of documented a decade ago.
Since the general plan is not something we're changing as we go, we just do major updates every once in a while. So if there's particular emphases, typically they actually will fit within one of the goals or actions that's already here with it, as you say, a modern interpretation. Yeah, okay, thanks. Yes, Councilmember Harvey.
When will we be doing another general plan update? I hate to ask. I know it takes forever.
So I will say I'm advocating for that because of the age, and also there's just been a number of, we're in a different reality than we were when this was done. That being said, it's probably $1 million.
Yeah.
So,
and a long time. It seemed like it took, I want to say, a couple of years, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's my recollection.
So I really appreciate the question. We're working with Administrative Services and the City Manager's Office to try to identify when that budget may be available. And also, I do think moving to the 2-year budget is very helpful because, frankly, we could span some of those costs over 2 revenue cycles. And we're also going to be on the hunt for some grants over this fiscal year, this fiscal budget, ideally targeting, sometime in the near future, but we don't have a timeline for when we'll be able to, frankly, afford that effort.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't anticipate a full general plan update in this next fiscal year, but I think, part of what we will be doing is, we haven't really talked internally too much about this, but doing, really identifying what elements of the general plan need to be refreshed, because it's not necessarily the entire thing, but there's certain areas that in particular need help and need, refreshing. And we can sit down, capture that, and then put that out and just see what we get from consultants. Is it really $1 million, or is it, well, hopefully it's not more than that, but,
Well, because
so
along with
something,
that comes the EIR, right? And that also ends up being expensive. And I was thinking more along the lines of maybe 5 years from, planning for it, I wasn't asking for it to be in this year's budget.
Yeah, there could be some other things, with the constant march on housing, changes in housing law. You know, we're seeing some new reports out of the state legislature. They're looking at what's next in housing law, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some significant work around CEQA, among other things, for permitting, you know, expediting. And it, you know, there could be opportunities for, you know, pre-identifying areas for, you know, streamlined CEQA, and that could be maybe folded into a general. So there's things on the horizon as well that could be coming from the state legislature that may make sense in terms of timing.
And your point is well taken about times have changed too, because even all the food stuff, I mean, we've really evolved a lot in that from when this was done. So we have so much more available options.
Great. There's no statutory requirement for updating timeline. So you got to do at least once every 20 years or anything like that?
The housing element is the only
Yeah, right.
chapter that has a mandated timeline for update, which ours has been done.
Yeah, right. Okay, great. Quick note in the final paragraph on the Chapter 11 implementation introduction, it references the annual nature of the budget cycle, so you need to update that. And in Eli's introduction, you said 6 of the 7 elements, but we're now 9 of the 10 elements in this report, right? So I think we'll open this to public comment now. So our action tonight is to review and accept the general plan annual report. So any comments on that? Let's start on Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment on this item. Seeing no hands, that will end the Zoom portion of public comment. Thank you.
All right, and in the chamber, anybody wishing to speak? Never mind, there's nobody here. Okay, thank you. So that'll end public comment. I remembered one other question I wanted to ask. Given that this report is a fairly new requirement, I'm sure the first year it had to be put together, it was a whole lot of work. How much staff time goes into it every year now? Rough guess.
It's not insignificant. I mean, everyone in this room, with the exception of the city attorney, did put some effort into this document. Our department is the kind of the quarterback, I would say, of the process, but Public Works, Police, City Manager's Office, and Admin Services all provided input on updating each of these sections.
And presumably we would have done, even if the state wasn't requiring it, we would do some tracking of how we're doing on meeting our, you know, our general plan goals and completing the actions. But I know, you know, the legislature likes to tell us we need to do things, and that makes it less money available to do everything else. Okay.
It begs the question, you know, that you bring it up. I mean, is really annual, does that really make sense?
Yeah, right.
You know, when you're not really getting a whole lot of value out of that, and if it takes resources away, I mean, you would think that they could get away with every few years, since general plans generally don't change that often.
Right.
It just seems your unfunded mandate
Right.
is,
Right.
I believe, what it's called.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, my personal preference is if they actually have some sort of goal in mind that they can articulate.
Right.
As opposed to just reporting for the sake of reporting, you know. I mean, certainly at a local level, there is value to monitoring it and reporting to the local governing body, but at a state level, I don't know, you know, except for some areas of statewide policy concern like housing.
Right. Okay.
Probably don't even look at it.
Right. Any more comments? Would you like a motion to accept? Is that how we do this?
I don't believe we need a motion. It's just,
No?
yeah,
Okay.
just take comments and accept.
Okay. I think we're done with that agenda item then. We'll move on to agenda item 12B, which is a presentation of the housing element annual report. We're back to you, Eli, I guess.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the housing element annual progress report. Next slide, please, Kevin. So some background on the housing element. It is one of the 7 required elements of the general plan. The housing element, unlike the other 6 elements within the general plan, is generally updated every 8 years for the city of Cotati, most recently in 2023, making this the second progress report of the 6th cycle, which spans from 2023 to 2031. Housing element annual progress reports have been required by the state since 1980, when the state also began requiring regular housing element updates. The city is required to also submit this APR to the state by April 1st each year. The purpose of the housing element APR is to demonstrate the city's progress in meeting its regional housing needs allocation, or RHNA, and its progress in implementing the programs listed in the housing element. The city's RHNA progress is summarized in Table B of the report, and the progress in implementing housing element programs is detailed in Table D. Next slide, please. As is customary, staff likes to use the housing element APR presentation as an opportunity to provide updates on new housing laws. And I thought it pertinent to highlight these 3 laws for the City Council. SB 937 restricts the city's ability to collect impact fees prior to issuing a certificate of occupancy. These fees have historically been collected at building permit issuance and is a change in procedure for staff. AB 2729 grants 18-month extensions for housing development entitlements that were issued prior to January 1st, 2024, and would expire prior to December 31st, 2025. And for Cotati, this extension will apply to the entitlements issued for the Cotati Station apartments. The last bill I would like to highlight is more of just something to keep in mind, as it has no immediate impact. AB 3093 explicitly defines extremely low and acutely low income levels and will incorporate these 2 income levels into the 7th cycle RHNA allocations. Cotati's 6th cycle RHNA is broken down by income category, including 60 units affordable at the very low income level, 34 units at the low income level, 39 units at the moderate income level, and 101 units at the market rate level, for a total of 234 units. Next slide, please. In 2024, 3 ADUs were issued certificates of occupancy, 10 units were issued building permits, and construction is underway. 338 units were entitled, and 36 units proposed in development applications received by the city. And these are all reflected in the APR as actions taken by the city. Other projects that we would like to highlight in the pipeline right now are 65 Lasker Lane, which is a duplex subdivision consisting of 36 units. 2 others include the 120 East Cotati Ave project, which is approximately 44 units of affordable housing, and the Redwood Row project that includes 168 units. Next slide, please. And so this table shows the number of units categorized by income level that the city has taken some action on within the last 2 years, be it issuing entitlements, building permits, or certificates of occupancy. And I would like to emphasize that only about 16 units included in the table are counting towards the city's RHNA right now. The rest have been issued entitlements, but those units don't count towards the city's RHNA until a project has been issued a building permit. And I wanted to use this table to make that distinction that, yes, the city has entitled a significant number of units, but it won't get credit for them until a building permit is issued. And at this point, staff is hopeful to meet the RHNA requirements. As mentioned previously, the city has over 340 units dispersed throughout the permitting process and in the pipeline, as well as other efforts to encourage the development of housing, which I will now hand over to Director Hausch to discuss.
So we'll go to the next slide and just pointing the council's attention to Table D. And I do apologize for the format. I feel like I do this every year, but this template is a mandated template we have to use from the state, and so it's not the most user-friendly, especially in a printed version. It does show it better when you look at the electronic agenda. But, so Table D is the implementation status of all of the housing element programs that we've committed to when the council adopted the housing element. So programs 1 through 3 kind of just talk about our nonprofit agency coordination, you know, being the smallest city or potentially the second smallest city in the county now, depending on which numbers you look at. We really lean on our partners, and you know, the presentation we reserved earlier tonight just shows how many services are available to our community members, even though not everything is provided by the city. And so we see our role as making sure that people who contact us looking for those services have the means of connecting with them, and that our staff is knowledgeable enough and the resources are available to point folks in the right direction. And so the table 1 through, or programs 1 through 3 really highlight the need for the city to do that, and table D includes a summary of how we've been really building on those relationships with the nonprofit agencies around. Programs 2, many in the 2, and then 3, several in the kind of chapter 3 or program 3, talk about our streamlining efforts and supporting and promoting housing opportunities. Council's well aware of these. You all have been kind of guiding that ship as we've been taking a lot of ordinance work before you. And so I just really wanted to highlight that, talk about it, you know, the ADU work, the cottage housing effort, the Cotati density bonus, the parking changes, all that the council have approved, have all been really with a lot of intent to support housing. And as Eli pointed out, we've been seeing a lot of projects get entitled. We just haven't seen them get to the next step. But we are hopeful that by the time we get a little bit deeper into this cycle, we will get some building permits issued. And we do even have additional folks talking to us about filing applications, and we talked about all our efforts for the next fiscal year to kind of start to market the city and highlight some of these changes to the housing development community to try to take advantage of all the council's effort to support housing. And then the last section that's highlighted on the slide is just really highlights all the anti-discrimination and displacement efforts and programs that we have in our housing element. Our steps to further affirmatively further fair housing and ensure cultural sensitivity as our code enforcement efforts are moved forward, those types of things. So there are a lot of programs around that. It's important to highlight those and to show our progress in trying to ensure that we are thoughtful for our existing residents as much as we're also trying to get some new units built. So just wanted to highlight those. And then another thing I wanted to point out, I was doing some research, and through 2024, so not even the bills that went into effect on January 1st, so the past 8 years, we had over 300 pieces of housing legislation adopted, and that equates to 35 bills a year, actually over 35 bills a year. So just, you know, our department with, 4 staff are really churning through, trying to keep up on these efforts, but it's been quite a Herculean effort, and the council's well aware. You all do a lot of work with our ordinance work, and we do our best to keep you up to date, but frankly, we can't keep up with it with that pace. But I think we're doing a good job. I think this report really highlights how far we've come in just a couple years to implement these programs. And so that's the goal of Table D. And I would encourage you to read that, because there is a lot of progress we've been making. And then you'll see in the next fiscal year, we feel like we're really going to close in on implementing almost all of the kind of the project level programs in the housing element, and then we'll just be focused on the ongoing kind of maintenance related elements. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Eli.
I just wanted to address Planning Commission comments on this housing element APR. They were generally focused on the city's RHNA progress, specifically the consequences of a deficiency in RHNA categories and the city's strategies to address deficiencies. Generally, deficiencies in lower income and above moderate RHNA categories will lead to the city being subject to SB 423, previously SB 35. a streamlined ministerial approval process to some degree. As for strategies to address RHNA deficiencies, the Cotati density bonus is one strategy to address deficiencies by allowing flexibility in the affordability levels that applicants can propose in new projects. And another highlighted throughout the presentation is the 120 East Cotati Ave project that looks to add about 44 units of lower income housing. Next slide, please. And with that, it is recommended by the Community Development Department that the City Council review and accept the Housing Element Annual Progress Report. Thank you.
Thank you. Council questions? Let's start with Vice Mayor Lemus this time. We can trade off.
So when I was reading the RHNA requirement and how many are permitted, which is really low. So as far as consequences, as long as we are doing things like the Cotati density bonus and some of the other projects we kind of have in the pipeline, we'll be okay? Or is there any kind of financial consequences for this?
So the consequences right now are not financial, but they basically make us subject to streamlined processes. So if someone were to propose an affordable housing project or a project that includes 50% affordable housing or 10% depending on which category we're subject to, then they would be allowed to do that without a discretionary process. So they would just go straight to building permits.
Like the SB 35s?
Correct.
Even if we're kind of showing that we're doing all these things and promoting all these programs and
If we don't
they're still
issue
not
the
being
building
built.
permits.
Okay,
That's correct.
thank you.
Councilmember Harvey.
That is so disturbing. I mean, looking at that table and that you put it up there, I mean, that we've entitled 346 units, even the numbers that have been entitled for low income with all of these, as you said, hundreds of state laws, those are pathetic numbers that they're really giving away the fact that, what do we have, 43 in low income versus 300 in market rate. To me, there's something very, very wrong with the legislation that's coming down from the state, because I don't see that we're not entitling them. They're not building them. And as Eli pointed out, that until the building permits are issued, we don't even get credit for them. To me, there's something very, very wrong. And it feels like we need to impress upon our legislators that we're not necessarily the problem. That we keep entitling these things and they don't get built is really wrong, in my opinion. When you talked about SB 937, and it said that the development impact fees to be paid at building occupancy, that's a little subtle, and I want to be precisely clear. Do they not actually get the occupancy permit until they pay them?
That's correct. But we
Okay.
had to build out a process to ensure that, somebody just doesn't call for final, which is occupancy, and because we're set up, if you call for an inspection, we're out there the next day.
Right.
So our process was very responsive to calls for inspection, including for final, and the building division doesn't necessarily talk to admin services to make sure all the bills are paid. So we've had to build out this process.
Okay.
Council approved the fee deferral for 902. As I mentioned in that presentation, we will not be bringing those back before council because now they are mandated. So it's on staff to build out a process to ensure that we don't grant occupancy until all of the impact fees are.
And that was my concern, because so many of these builders, they are all of a sudden bankrupt. So it's like, oh, I got my occupancy and I'm letting people in and I no longer exist anymore, and therefore you'll never be able to collect. So that was what I was concerned about.
As a backstop, you hope you can record these agreements on the property. And in theory, a title company would see that before they fund the loan. Doesn't always work that way, but in theory, it's just another check, another backstop for our internal process that Noah was talking about.
And my second question has to do in the financial considerations there is talk about the $620,000 to support affordable housing on the Cotati stations. Now, my question is that only as the project was entitled? So if they come back with something completely different, does that agreement go away? Or
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's what I wanted to know about that. And then I had one more question, and that is, oh, these aren't numbered. Okay. On the, I guess it's Table D, there's a section called 4-6, Culturally Appropriate Facilitation and Improvement. So there's a sentence in 4.5 that I think maybe goes on 4.6, because it says cultural sensitivity training planned for spring and summer 2025. And it felt like that belonged kind of with the culturally appropriate facilitation.
Okay, we'll take a look at.
Okay.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Lemus has another question.
Yeah, well, I think it was more of a comment than a
Okay,
question.
then let's wait till after
I'll wait.
public comment. Great, thank you. I had one question on the table of, current RENA categories for the projects currently in the development process. Why are the affordable numbers so out of whack when so imbalanced between the categories when our inclusionary housing ordinance requires 555? Where's that?
Most of the projects we've entitled have taken advantage of state density bonus law, which has a prescribed formula that supersedes our local affordable housing ordinance.
And following up on that, is it true that we sort of get, if we overbuild in a more affordable category, that sort of extra rolls up to the higher affordability levels? I thought I remembered that last RENA cycle.
For the city being subject to SB 423 streamlining, they only consider low and very low in the lower income categories. So if we overbuild in the very low, those can count up to lower.
And that, I'm not going to remember that number as well as I remember SB 35. So that does not consider whether we're meeting RENA in moderate income. I see.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Planning Commission had the same question, and Eli had done a lot of research and was very well versed, but we had him double check. And moderate is not listed in the legislation language.
Huh.
So we haven't talked to the city attorney about our interpretation of that, but it says lower income, which generally, historically in housing law has meant low and very low. And so moderate is not mentioned in that legislation.
Okay, and then the very low is actually two categories, right? A 30 and a 30?
Yes.
Do we know, like those 36, how they're split between extremely and very, or whatever the?
Well, so those are all from state density bonus projects, and they are not going to build extremely low.
Okay.
They're going to build the
high end of very low.
The lowest, yeah, the highest of the low that they're required to build.
Yes, okay.
So the only units that we're anticipating getting in extremely low would be from the city's subsidized 120 East Cotati Avenue project when that comes forward.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I would also add
Go ahead.
that the city can count ADUs as extremely low income if someone that is going to build an ADU upon building permit issuance, we have them fill out a survey and ask what they're going to charge for rent, and if they're going to have family live there and not charge them rent, we can count those new units as extremely low.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's worth highlighting. So historically, HCD has been fairly supportive of kind of creative accounting with regards to meeting URENA. And so if you went online and did some research and saw advertisements for units that fit into a category, they would let you count those even if they weren't deed restricted. They have kind of continued in trying to be somewhat accommodating, but they want better documentation. And so, but even before they started, there's now a state program asking for surveys. But even before that, we started doing it, and we have some documentation as to how our ADUs are going to get built or utilized and the rent ranges. It's voluntary to complete, but generally people are completing it, and we are getting some extremely low units and low-income units through that. As Eli mentioned, some people don't charge family members rent, or it's just to cover the cost of construction, those types of things. So we are seeing some credits because we're doing our best to try to get that information.
Great. Go ahead.
And does it always have to be new building? What about like refurbishing of housing? Because I know like on East Cotati Avenue, we invested that money when, was it Burbank bought that? Do we get any kind of anything for that?
So there is a whole section, and right now the name of how they. Substantial rehabilitation. Yeah, but there's a term, there's an arena category, and it is not restoration, Eli may remember.
It's like preservation.
Preservation,
of
sorry, it is
right.
preservation. And so what that allows the city to do is exactly what Councilmember Harvey mentioned, is we can invest in an affordable housing project or another housing project to buy down that affordability or to extend it, and we get credit for that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, with, is it Windwood, I can't remember the name of the project, we didn't meet the category. When we wrote the check, was too early to count. And so they would not give us credit for that as preservation units. But we did, in effect, preserve those units. We got a new 55-year term on the affordability. So the units are preserved, and the city did the right thing. Unfortunately, the state structure did not allow us to take credit for that.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. Until Burbank, we want our money back. We'll pay them back tomorrow. Okay.
Then we'll turn into them again.
That's right. That's right. Okay, thank you. I'm going to open this for public comment. So anybody wishing to comment on the presentation of the housing element annual report? There's nobody in the chambers. We'll check with Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. Mayor Ford, that will end public comment.
All right, so now we're open for comments. Vice Mayor Lemus.
I was just going to say that I know in the previous meeting we talked about how there's going to be a venue through the state, maybe through Cal Cities, where we can give feedback on the housing element so that they can maybe make some modifications. So I think definitely we need to connect with, I don't know if I have it, maybe at home I have the contact or something, but there was something where they were seeking feedback from cities on the housing element process. Because obviously it's not working for some cities, for many cities, I think.
Great. And it's not clear it's working for the people who need housing.
Right.
More at the point, yeah. Any more? Okay, I'd be looking for a motion to accept the report.
Yeah, we won't need a motion.
Oh.
but-
We don't need a
We
motion.
don't need a
Oh, that's
motion.
right,
Okay,
we don't need
all
a
right,
motion.
okay,
Okay,
all right.
sorry. Okay, we'll move on to the city manager's report then.
All right, so just a reminder that we do have a vacancy on our planning commission, and that vacancy is posted, has been posted on our website, and any applications are due by 5 p.m. this Thursday, March 13th, and you can find that from the city's homepage on news. And we do have a street improvement project out to bid, which the bidding opens on March 18th. And this is the project for lower cost paving preservation. So it's a preservation project as opposed to a reconstruction project. And consists of spot repairs on Old Redwood Highway and dig out crack seal and slurry seal for portions of East Cotati Avenue. And then Forno Way, Jagle, Honor, Dorfman, Clothier, Logan, Loma Linda, Issel, Water. So you get the general idea in that area of town. In case anyone's curious, work at Putnam Park is still on a hold due to the soil moisture because of the rain. So they can't really get in there yet and compact, or potentially get stuck in the park. Another rainstorm is forecast, so we're still on hold for the time being. But once things dry out, they'll be back out there. And that is similar issue there is true for some of the pathway project, the sidewalk gap closure. They did do work at Olaf, but the other elements of that project are still waiting on the soil to be adequate to compact. I think everyone in this room knows, but if anyone's watching, we do have a general fund budget study session planned for April 1st. That's our next budget step. And then there is a Measure S oversight meeting that's scheduled for April 8th, now that we have an approved annual financial audit. I mentioned this last time, but the Climate Ready Cotati Fair, I'll just mention it again, that we're hosting a fair at the Cotati Train Depot on March 29th from 10 a.m. to 2. And it is a free fair. There's going to be more than 30 community organizations there and agencies that are going to have a ton of resources and hopefully fun. I know, well, I've already heard some of the fun stuff. You got I mentioned this last time, but you got the bicycle blender, and then I'm hearing that there'll be some chickens there, and it'll be, as long as they keep them in a cage, they don't fly out into the rail track or something, that would be kind of bad. But anyway.
Are they egg-laying chickens?
They are. Yes. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah, put a quarter in the box and you get an egg, will drop out. So it's the best deal in town, yeah. All right, and then we did have Thomas Page kids here at City Hall last week learning about the city, and they were guided by parent volunteers as well as the Historical Society. It's an annual thing. And you might have also noticed that there's been several different school groups in the ranch, both when Thomas Page was here last week, but also they were here today, planting pollinators and native plants as part of that project that we talked about with the new licensees. We have spring break camp coming up next week, March 17th to 21st, and it's an all-day camp, 8 a.m. to 5. And it's just obviously to take care of kids while they're out of school for that week, if anyone needs that. And then we also have the Sandy Loam early release enrichment program at the ranch, Wednesdays, noon to 5 for children's K to 5, 5th grade. And it's a lot of farm education, nature education, art, homework time, and more. And then finally, just other things coming up is we have bunny brunch and the egg hunt. We, as of this afternoon, we have 2 spaces left in the 9 a.m. session, and I think the rest is sold out. It's always a very popular one. I think it's the egg hunt. People are just enrolling to try to get some eggs. But it turns out they're not real eggs, so yeah, that'll be a shock for them. Yeah. We also have bunnygrams, the community yard sale, and multiple other summer camps for the farm, and including farm camp at the ranch coming up. And all this information is available on the website for anyone that is interested. And I will just leave it there. Take any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Any questions for the city manager? Okay, we'll move on to city council member reports. Councilmember Harvey.
Gee. So let's see, let me start back here, I guess. So last week, I attended our monthly LAFCO meeting, and then after that was the finance committee meeting for LAFCO. I got nominated to be on that. There'll be more to come on that. But of note, what we passed were 2 more reorganizations. So Goldridge Fire Protection District is now going to include Monterey Fire, as well as the city of Sebastopol. So they worked out an agreement with that. So those were the two things that we approved this week. And sadly, our chair, Jean Kopolchek, had to resign from LAFCO because she was appointed to the Sonoma County Planning Commission, and I guess legally she can't be on both of them. So that was her last meeting. She just had to abruptly leave us. So that'll be sad because she's been on it for over 20 years. She's been on there forever. So we're really sad to lose her there. Today I attended the executive committee meeting for the Mosquito and Vector Control District, and we went over a lot of different operational things and projects that are going on. So I won't bore you with that. Yesterday I attended the SCTCA meeting. I can't get used to that new terminology. But on SCTCA, we had last time talked about John wanting to serve on the Climate Advisory Committee, and Drew checked with the bylaws, and we can't have elected officials on those, so we are going to have to repost for that. Sorry, I tried. But in yesterday's meeting, and you guys may know about this, but it was of interest to me, the Inflation Reduction Act elective pay briefing, which gets tax credits. I don't know if we've looked into doing any of those, but one of the things that you can get funding for is like microgrids and EV vehicles and things like that, and what some cities are doing. And there was a good article in there about Denver is you have to pay first and then you apply and you get the credits after. But what they were doing is like rolling that over so that they can kind of pay it forward. So I just thought that was something that maybe we should look into. We went over the comprehensive transportation plan. I know you guys we had a lot of input in there, and I just want to remind you that the final updates are due by April 30th before they finalize that. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew about that. And that's all I have on that.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Lemus.
Yes, okay. So I was gone the last meeting, but since then, let me see, on the 13th of February, I went to the MCA general meeting. We received a presentation on current immigration trends in Sonoma County by Secure Families and the District Attorney and Public Defender's offices. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, I went to John Reed Elementary School. There was a Family Resource Center presentation by CPI, California Parenting Institute, board and staff at the Family Resource Center, and I learned about how their impact supporting students and families around health advocacy, education support, leadership, and resource navigation. And they do need food for their pantry. They have a food pantry, so they do look for donations of food. And I have impact reports if anybody wants to review that for the John Reed Elementary School. On March 3rd, the Office of Equity for the county invited me. I've been working on an RFP for selection of a consultant to help with providing more opportunities for diversity on many boards and commissions around the county. So it looks like they're moving forward with someone. I couldn't make the interview because I was busy yesterday, but I did get an email that they're moving forward with a consultant for that. On the 4th, March 4th, the Press Democrat, this is my second or third year now helping with Youth Service Awards as a panel judge for Press Democrat scholarships for students. And I interviewed students from around the county for a Latinx Services Award, and that was really great because I got to just interview so many just really bright, smart students from all of Sonoma County, and that was just amazing. I enjoyed that. March 6th, last week, I went to Sonoma Clean Power meeting. There was interest. We received an interest letter from Clear Lake about wanting to join Sonoma Clean Power. So staff is doing a feasibility study on all of Lake County to see, because if Clear Lake wants to come in, maybe other cities may also want to join. So they're working on a feasibility study for that. And we received an interesting community engagement presentation with a proposal to support an economic development hub that aligns with Sonoma Clean Power's mission and support small, diverse businesses. And there's 4 board members, and I'm one of the new ad hoc members on an ad hoc that's going to be exploring this opportunity along with 3 other board directors. I also last week went to Leadership Pathways on behalf of our city council and presented on Cotati and personal leadership history and answered like a Q&A, and this was with the Pathways, Leadership Pathways, Ron Park Cotati. And I went to a Regional Parks Foundation board meeting also last week, receiving an annual report that went to the Board of Supervisors today, and I have copies for everyone, which I forgot at home, but I have one copy with me today. It includes information on support of Cotati Parks through Measure M funding and just a lot of the work of the parks. So that's my report for today.
Thank you. Wow. Just a few things to report. The Russian River Watershed Association Board met since our last meeting. I'm vice chair of that board. We adopted the 2025-26 work plan, which Craig had worked with the technical committee to produce. And we have an upcoming strategic planning process, which the Russian River Watershed Association has never had a strategic plan, so we're excited to finally do that. I met today with Herman G. Hernandez, who's the Executive Director of Locien, and just to understand more about the great work that organization does. One thing that connected for me is they've got a leadership program called their Bridge program that's just starting its first cohort this spring. They're specifically focused on preparing people to be nonprofit board members, but in the future they hope also to include, you know, civic engagement through commissions and committees, things like that. So I pointed him to our own Leadership Pathways program and encouraged him to think about, you know, how he might work with or what different niches those different programs are filling and things like that. And it's a great conversation. That's the end of my report. All right, we'll move on to public comment on non-action agenda items. There is nobody in the chambers to comment, so we'll check with Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. One last chance for our Zoom audience. Please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. Mayor Ford, that will end public comment.
All right, thank you. Was there information received after the agenda was posted?
There was. Everything received is available here in print in the chamber and was added to the HTML agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'll adjourn at 8:35.